Hi, this week our main goal was to create logging capabilities for our application as well as to create some sort of uptime monitor because these days everybody expects websites to be up 24 hours a day all year. So those were our two jobs this week. The main benefit of logging is for not only for just tracking what everybody's doing in your application, but also for debugging later. When you create these logs, you can have an ability to automatically save them, and then also through implementation of more complex libraries, you can actually parse all the logs and pull out any relevant data. As you'll see in a minute as we start reading the logs as we're doing things in the application, the logs can get extensive really fast, and this is only with one user. So to manually read through the logs would be pretty much impossible. So for our purposes, a parser isn't necessary because we're only using it one user at a time, but even if we had 50 users, we would want a log parser. That way, not only is it easier on the testers, but then if the bug comes up, we can parse the logs. Let's say there was a bug in the login, we can pull any of the relevant logs because Heroku logs every single action that goes on behind the scenes, and that'll be saved inside of the log file. So as you could imagine, they get extremely long and impossible to read. So the application this week hasn't changed a lot. We've changed some of the orientation of the items. As you remember, this was on the left over here before, and this wasn't as succinct. It was sort of a bigger form. So we've changed a few things with the actual looks of the application. But other than that, most of the work was done on the back end through the logs and then also through the uptime monitor. So let's just see here let's take a look at the log. In order to view the logs, what we're going to do is this is the log right here, but to view the logs on Heroku, there's this more option up here, and you can click view logs. It'll show you all the logs that are going on right now, and then saved logs are separate from this in any specified folder within the application. And you could even send the logs to an email address or send it to an on-site machine or a machine in the cloud and just have a dedicated machine just to hold all of your logs. But for us, we currently aren't saving the logs because our debugging happens all through the coding process. We're not running extremely complicated processes to where we need to view the logs. But for demonstration purposes, the logs do work, and you'll see here in a minute when I register, it'll create a whole bunch of logs for what goes on in the back end of the app. So if I were to register here with an account, I got to use one that I did not use last week. And then let's all right. Oh, no, that was the sign-in page. That's my fault. Oh, username. And then we've registered for our account. We can go back home. This is actually logged in under my other account. So let's go to the login page. And by now, we should be able to go back to the logs here and see that we've created lots of log data just from doing that. Not only from creating the account, but starting at the invalid sign-in. So it attempted to call the user method getEmail. It ran the user method, and then it attempted to call this, ran this, and as you can see, the data access service. And each time the log updates, it'll pull me back down to the bottom. So that's what happened when we attempted to log in with a non-existing account the first time, and then we created the account here, and that's where you can see the user business service method and then the user data access service, right? and here it goes through, it gets the connection to the database. So you can see how this would quickly become overwhelming to try and read and work through to try and find any sort of error in it. That's why parsing was so important for a bigger application. But here's the log so far, and this we haven't even logged in yet. This was just from creating that account and then logging out of the other account. Lots of useful information though, and you want your logs to be extremely thorough. You do want to be able to parse them and make them more readable, make a smaller file that you can actually read through, and you could also programmatically solve some issues possibly by parsing the log and running it through loops and figuring out what's going on behind the scenes. However, you do want a just complete log that you can access. So we would want to save all of this information. Not that we would ever view it, but if we had to view it, we would have it. Hopefully we would build parsers that were good enough to pull out each piece of data as we needed it, and we would never have to go back to the full log file because it can get massive like this. So then we will come here, go to the home, and we can log in here. There we go, we logged in. This is a new user, so obviously they don't have anything in their library. But then if we go back here, we could see that this is where the login portion happened, and it's got the date and the time here. And it's on my computer. I know you can't see that, but it's 2:41, and then you could see at 22:41 right there. That's when all of these were called. So it's going to save the date and the time. Also another important aspect of this, and then you could see as well all of this other stuff over here. So now for the second portion of this week's assignment, which was the uptime robot. This isn't necessarily something that you're going to want to program into your application, because obviously the point of this is to check if the application goes down. You can program into your logger to have it log if there are nobody's accessing the data within, depending on how big your app is, but within 10 seconds. If you're an app like Google, it's like if you have a millisecond where nobody's accessing data, then it means your app is down, more than likely. But here we can see, so that could be a useful thing to implement in the logs, but for our purposes, we want an uptime robot which is monitoring it from the outside, not within the app. Because this way, if our app goes down and our uptime robot was programmed into our app, then it would have no way of letting us know because it's offline. Whereas if you use a third-party software, the chances of the third-party software along with your application going down are extremely low, unless somehow you are within the same cluster of the cloud, which I'm almost certain that these third-party clients have, backups for that, and they're on the 99.99% uptime. So it shouldn't be a big deal here. But you could see we're monitoring our CLC website, and that is the link to the website right here, the Heroku app, and it takes us right here. So this is this is monitoring our website, and it says it's up, and it sent 200 requests, and they were all okay. And it's been doing that for 4 hours and 2 minutes since it was created. And then the interesting thing is this uptime robot actually has its own logs, which could be useful. Just like the logs in our application, we're able to tell us every single command that was executed, any variable, any database access. This also could tell you every time it reaches out, what happens, what the ping is. Did it get an answer back quickly? Was it taking a long time? How much data was loaded in? And all those sorts of things. But you could see our overall uptime here, 100%, 100%. Obviously, as your app runs, that will do nothing but drop. But hopefully it doesn't drop below, 99%. So yeah, that's our application for this week. And next week we'll be working on implementing the finishing touches for it, but this is it so far. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.